Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson on 3D drawing for your model railway. Today's lesson, because the weather's quite nice, I'm going to set up my printer for the first time this year. So I'm looking to export and print this flat roll that I've designed over the winter. The buffers, I haven't drawn them on there because I've already got a buffer to a standard UIC design. I'll just print them separately and glue them on afterwards. And the load for the wagon will be a Caterpillar D4H dozer. Now, these wagons were primarily within the engineers department, so they were used for transporting things like these Caterpillars or excavators around to engineering sites. So that's the plan for today's lesson. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing I need to do is export these files ready to print. So if I do File, 3D Print, I'm going to turn off the Send to 3D Printer utility, select the body, click on OK, and I'm going to create a folder to put them all in. So here, 3D Print Files, new folder, flat roll, and where's it gone? There it is, yeah. Okay, so in there I'm going to create the wagon, flat roll, EAC, and click on Save. That's the wagon exporting. So the next file I'm going to export is the buffers. So again, same principle, 3D print, make sure the utility is turned off, select the buffer, click on OK, and label that as buffer UIC, just so I know which one it is. And then the last thing we'll do is the dozer. Now the dozer with the tracks, what I've had to do on the bottom to make it printable, I hope it will be printable, is just create the base track flat. If I was trying to do these ribs all the way around, it's been an absolute nightmare to support them all. So the best thing I thought was just support it with a flat base. So same principle, File, 3D Print, select the body, click on OK, and dozer D4H. Save. Okay, so jumping into Chitubox now, I'm going to find the files that I require. So coming into flat roll, and then we're going to start with the flat roll to start with, get the wagon on there. Okay, so you can see it fits across the base this direction. What we will need to do is change the rotation. So I'm going to rotate it up slightly, just to give it a bit of a better angle, so that there's less cross section touching the print plate at any one time. Normally, as I say, you would want to rotate it in two directions, but I think with this model, because of the amount of detail that I've got in the sides here, if I was to rotate this diagonally, I would end up with a lot of this detail needing support, and it just become a bit of a nightmare and end up losing the print quality that I'm after. So I'm going to go with just rotating it in the one direction, and then we'll support it from there. A lot of people have been asking me about, are these models available in 00? Well, the simple answer is they're drawn in Engage, but you can come into this item here on the Chitubox and you can just rescale it. So obviously to work out in Engage it's 1 to 148. So if you were to times the size by 148 and then divide by the scale you require, whether it be HO, Z gauge, 00, you would then be able to work out what percentage you would have to scale this at, and then that would enable you to be able to print it in any gauge that you wanted. If I was to say 00 is roughly 200%, so if I was to rotate that to 200%, you could see that going across the plate it would struggle to fit. But if I was to turn that through 90 degrees, even then it's going to be struggling to fit. But what you could then do is rotate it on this angle up higher, and there you can see that wagon would fit. It would take a lot longer to print, but it would fit in there. You would obviously in 00 what you prefer to get is a larger print build base area, but you know, I'll print in Engage, so for me it's not an issue. Rotate that back, down. Over that, and rotate that back through 90 degrees. Okay, so that's back where we were. Okay, you can see these red bits here. That's because it's not actually within the build plate. So we're going to have to. I'm going to have to move this across slightly to get it within the build plate, and then that side's not within the build plate. So I've got two choices. I am going to have to turn this 90 degrees, probably looking at this. So we'll do that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the file. I'm going to start again with that. So the reason I'm going to start again is just because I've been playing around with it quite a bit in there. It's going to be easier just to have a nice clean file. I know exactly what file it is, whether it's going to fit. Okay, so you can see that yes, it will need rotating. Okay, so we'll start initially bringing it up in that direction. Okay, and there you can see that side's within the build plate, and so is that side. So both sides are now within the build plate, which I'm happy with. Okay, so let's start looking to add some supports to here. So if we click on the supports, make sure we're on mediums to start with. So the first thing I'm going to do is support this edge here. So I'm going to zoom right in and then start adding my supports. I need them right on the corner. Now I know that it is going to create a little bit of damage on the outside edge here, but you know, you've got to do these supports. Okay, so they're all the way across. Okay, so now we can see these bits are going to need supporting here. So I'm going to put a couple of little light supports right on the bottom of these, like that. Okay, and I'm wondering whether these will probably need supporting as well, because that is sticking out slightly. And we may even need to put support on this bottom edge here. Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to leave. No, I am going to put support on these. I think that's definitely going to need it. So you can see those supports aren't actually printing because they're outside the build plate. So I think I am going to have to rotate this through 90 degrees. So let's come back out of there. And we'll rotate 90 degrees on that. Okay, this bit, I'll come back to whether that needs support in a bit, because I can check that externally with software. So come back into the supports using the mediums again. I'm just going to start to run these mediums down this frame here, all the way to the very bottom, and then start to come back up. Trying to just rotate this so I've got a better view of where I'm supporting here. You can see I'm just running these all the way up the side here. This is just going to give the base a nice support as it prints. Right on the end there. Let's see if we can get a couple on this frame. Good. Okay, before I start rotating to come down this other side, I'm going to run some supports across the middle there. Right, where should we go next with it? So these are going to be floating and up here, so let me point these out to you. So these parts here, these are going to be floating here, so I will put a couple of supports on these. That's connected there, so that one should be fine. And then we need to support this top edge here, so that one needs supporting. I'm going to put a couple in here just to help that there as well. Okay, coming back down this side now. Corner there. Good. Now, and then we'll go down to this bottom edge again and come back up here. So we'll get right in the corner there. Okay, so now we've basically gone all the way around the outside. Now I'm going to start to look for details that are going to need supporting. So all of these are going to need it because, as you can see on the model, they just sort of float out in the air. So I'm just going to put some medium supports on these. Now I might lose these details after the print, but if I do, then so be it. It's best case scenario really with them. If they don't print, they don't print. Oh, this one's not liking supporting. Okay, so what we might have to do is support and then edit support. So you see how I've supported it to the axle box there, which is not what I want to support to. Then I can select that edge and come up. Now you can see that's going to cause me a bit of an issue. So I'm going to drag this support away. And you see how that's now away from the main body, but able to catch into. The only issue really is it's not catching the very end of where I want it to catch, unfortunately. So I'm probably going to lose some of the support, some of the eyelet here. Okay. So we'll come around to the end, we'll do the same on these end ones here. You can see I'm getting the same issue here, so we'll just about get them there, but I think what I'm going to do is just drag those main supports out like this, just away from the body so that it doesn't attach to the body at all. Okay, again, adding down this side, looking at the details here. So yeah, I've never printed this wagon before, so it is going to be a bit of a learning experience. So the first thing, as I say, I'm looking at is, will the eyelets print? If they don't print, the next thing I'll do is I will just remove them from the model and not bother. There's no point attempting to print them if they're not going to. So have a look around the model now. Is there anything else I can find? Okay, so now I think I'm pretty much covered all of the details, although I will check that. The next thing I'm going to do is just add some supports into the middle underneath. So just adding them randomly in areas where I think they will benefit the model, and then on the base here I'll just do random patterns to help support it as it prints. Okay, so now I've loaded all that up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it into another piece of software that, luckily, because I've got a Photon, I've got this software. I don't know if any other printers do allow you to use something similar, but I can actually check the file to make sure that it will print okay. See if I can get this to go a bit closer. go any closer, unfortunately. Let's have a look how that's looking in the software. So let's slice this up. Okay, so you can see it's sliced. It's wanting to use about 5 millilitres of resin. Obviously, you're going to have more than that, and you probably will have some wastage on top. Price-wise, it's looking at 15 pence. Now, realistically, you're probably going to be looking at more 30, 40p, if not a little bit more than that. And it's going to take you roughly 4 hours to print. So I'm going to save this first of all. Let's go into the correct file, click on save. And I'm going to jump across to the other software to show you how that works. Okay, so jumped into this other piece of software. This is called Photon File Validator. It's quite a useful piece of software because as I add in my file, it will then go through each layer and tell me whether it's got any islands or not. So there I can see there's my Chitubox file, flat volt EAC. Import it, and you can see it now calculates through every single layer. That's going to take you a little bit of a while, so I'll pause the video while it does that. Okay, so now that's looked at every layer, it's come up with a load of unsupported islands found in the layers, and it's listed them all. So if I now click on Fix, it tells you what they all are and how many islands there are on each level. So if I just now click Start and allow it, and it will try to change things. If it can't change them, it tells you where they are. So here we've got layer 201 and 202 and 740, which realistically need to have something done about them. So we can now come out of it, look at those islands. So if we use this little arrow tool, it will then take us. Now that is where I was expecting it to be, which is the bottom where the coupling hook is. So there's that first layer, and then there's 2 on either side there. So they're going to need to be looked at. And what are these? I'm just going to scroll through the layers and see what they're actually part of the supports. So those, I'm going to cheat with those ones, but I'm going to try and do something with these other two, I think. So what I could do with these within this software, rather than adding a support on there, because I would end up damaging the print, I can just click on the area that needs supporting, and then it brings up the pixels which are unsupported, and I can literally just draw in, holding down the button, where I now want to draw extra pixels. That then stops those pieces becoming islands. And I know that's a bit of a cheat, but it does limit the effect of the having to use extra supports. And I don't just do it on the first layer. So 201 and 202 were the two that were unsupported. You can see on 202 the center bit here is absolutely fine. But if I now go 203, I've still got these parts as islands. So I just tie those in as well. So they're then having that extra support that we require. And ultimately, these pixels, you are not going to see them being ever so slightly diagonal, which was essentially what they're doing when I add these in, because they're tiny, they're absolutely tiny. Okay, so let's look at 740. So these are, let's come out there, where the supports haven't quite joined up to each other. So same thing, same principle. I'm just going to draw some pixels in here to add those supports in. In fact, before I do this, I'm going to add in the other files. I don't know why I'm doing this. I should add the other files in that I'm going to print and then do them all as one. So this one will be supported afterwards. I'm going to do that in a second. So I'm going to add the dozer in and the buffers in and then come back and do this. Okay, so I was having a little bit of an issue getting supports to be able to work out correctly on the tracks here. So what I've done, I've come into Fusion, and I've just extruded all of these features here inwards, so they're all touching the inward plane, just to give it a bit more support, because I was really concerned that they were so delicate that I was expecting them all to just fail and end up with a bit of a rubbish print. So as I say, I've just extruded those inwards to try and fix that. Okay, so jump back into Chitubox, we'll get that new file of the dozer here, add this in. Gonna have to rotate it, so we'll rotate it on the Z axis. Let's start initially 90 degrees, now I want the other way, so 270. So what I want to do is I want to rotate this now on the X axis in that direction, so it's the opposite of the crane, of the flat one. That will give a more even spread of the forces as it prints. So that's why I want it to face the other direction. Let's drag that in, so it's all the way on the build plate, make sure it's not too close. Okay, and you can see that the changes I've made here, you're not going to notice them, and especially, I think there's like 0.5 mm thickness change. You're not going to notice that in N-Gauge, it's tiny. You're going to have to be really up close to be able to notice it. Okay, so let's start by adding all these supports back in. So we'll come back onto this base here. We'll add the 4 corners. And the outside. Rotate that, I'm just going to do some down the middle as well. Because obviously a lot of the forces are going to be put through these tracks as it initially starts to print, so you need to make sure they are well supported, because otherwise it'll just pull it all off the print base. Right, I'm not happy with these 3, so I'm just going to delete them. They're not quite at the end enough for me. So let's get rid of those and start again. Get them right on the end there. Okay, so let's now start to look at supporting the tracks here on the base. So I'm just going to throw a couple of supports in here, because it's going to mash this up a little bit in there, but if I do that, it will support both the edge of the track coming this way and that one where it starts there. And then I need to do the same on this track here. Okay, the angles on that next one I think should be okay. So do the same on this one. We'll just come across the middle there. And then we're going to have to do this one and possibly that one. Side on. Yeah, that one's going to need it as well. So you can see these corners are going to be an absolute nightmare on the print, and it might just be a bit of a poor print quality, but we'll have to just see how it goes really. If I have to make changes to the print file, I'll do so. Okay, so now we'll come and support the main body. Now this is going to take a lot of weight coming through here, so I'm going to use a couple of quite heavy supports in here, just to try and give it a bit more of a beef, bit of a better hold. and ultimately you're not going to see these. I'm going to file them off afterwards. I will do medium supports on this edge here. Let's just add a couple more heavies in here. I think one there, one there, there. As I say, there's going to be a lot of pull forces come through here because that's a solid body in here. So as that comes up, that's going to create a lot of suction on the printer. Okay, this edge is going to need support, and this will damage the outside of the model there. You can see it's going to do the support there as well, unfortunately. Let's see if I can do anything about those. Rather than support, I'm going to support here again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add one like this, and then edit it again. Drag that tip across like that, and then we'll delete this one. Add a support up here, and then edit it so the tip is coming down. Trying to create just as little damage as possible as it prints. Okay, I might, yeah, what I'm going to do is going to put some in this window, I think. See if I can get. I'm just trying to get it to a point where I can actually see where I'm looking at here. Yeah, it's not going to support on there, unfortunately. So I'm going to hope that potentially the two arms here, they are quite thick, hope that that'll support that. It's only got to support up to this point, and you've got these ones here as well, which are holding it up as well. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. That I think is going to be okay. They will print okay. This is going to need supporting under here. So again, just using those medium supports. Edit, that might be why it wasn't putting up the top there. I'll look again in a second. Add those across here. Let's go back to this one, see what we can do here. Yeah, I thought it'd do that. Yeah. Okay, so it's going to have a little bit of damage top and bottom here, but I'll file that out, and if it needs a little bit of filling, then I'll do so. It just gives it that bit more protection there. A little bit concerned about these two sides here. I'm going to put those in there just to give a bit more rigidity, and they'll cut out okay. I'm not worried too much about damage internally. Okay, and then we need to support this blade. So I'm going to come all the way along the bottom edge. Okay, so it's gone into the blade, but again, this is going to be on a wagon. I'm going to potentially cover it with a bit of mud. Put a little bit of support in here just to help it. It's on the inside of the model anyhow, so it's not going to be too catastrophic if it scars there. Okay, I'm going to put a couple up the side here. I think if they'll go on, if I can get them to go on to the sides. Like that. Again, just to help support it as it prints the height wise. I might just stick one or two on the back face here. they'll be supported by that. That, if it doesn't print, isn't the end of the world, because I'll just put a bit of wire in there. That should be okay. Just looking around for anything that I think could become an issue. That might be an issue, and I might need to sort something else in there. Okay, and I think I'll leave that there for the moment. What I'll do is I'm going to add in the buffers now as well. Okay, so just looking to add the buffers in, just find the files, buffer UIC, add them in. Now I know that these are going to be overscale. I need to reduce them in size. So just come down by 50% on those, and I'm going to rotate those. Rotate those 90 degrees so that they're completely upright. And that's how I print my buffers, because then all the support will be going through the buffer itself. Now these buffers, again, I've never printed them in Engage, so I'm hoping they'll come out okay. But we've got to see how they go. So with the buffers here, let's add these supports onto the bottom. And I always do 5 on the buffer like that. Okay, so now I've just done the one, but I can show you something else on this software is we can just copy them. So clone current model, and it will just start adding them in. And I know that I'm only going to need 4 of them for the wagon. But when I do something like this, just so that I know that I've got enough, if any of them fail, I always like to just double them up. Then I've got spares if I need them as well. And ultimately, when you think about it, they're not going to be using a lot of resin. Just going to overlap them slightly so that it saves a little bit of resin on the bases. And that's not going to make a massive difference, but as my granddad always used to say, look after the pennies and the pennies will look after the pounds. It's just saving a little tiny bit of resin there. Okay, I'm going to have a look through some of my other parts. I'm going to see if I've got anything else I need to print that I could potentially fit on the sides here, and I won't add those into the video. Okay, so I've added a couple of extra bits that I needed to print or wanted to print off. I've got this jet washer and a water bowser that are used by the southern region as part of their drain train. So I've added those in. We'll slice that software, slice that print file. We'll have a look to see what it's going to take. Now, obviously you can see I've filled the build plate, and we worked out earlier this is going to take about 4 hours just to print the flat one. Now you can see by adding all these parts, because they're only just slightly taller, the dozer is now going to be the limiting thing that's going to take the length of time. I could fill this build plate with as much as I possibly can. It's only the tallest thing that dictates the time. So I reckon this is going to be about 6 hours looking at this with a height of that. It's taking a little bit longer because there's all the extra parts on there that it needs to calculate. Okay, so there you go, even better. 4 hours, 44 minutes. Total price, 40p. Probably looking at about £1 after I've got wastage and stuff like that. And this is, as I say, isn't always the most accurate. So we'll save this. We'll put it into the Flatwell folder that we were using that. Save that. Let it create its file, and then we're going to jump across to the Photon Validator. Okay, so let's open the file back up now. So it refreshes, and it's going to go through all its layers. It's got to do up to 977 layers here. Again, I'll just pause this so you don't have to watch all of it going through. Okay, so the last of it just finished. Again, we'll do the same as before. Do the file fix, tell it to start, and it'll work out all the islands and try and change all the pixels if it can to try and fix them. We know that there is going to be a few that we can't fix. If you remember last time, there was layer 201, 202, and 700 and something. There may be obviously some more now because of the extra bits, so we might have to try and do something about these. So let's have a quick look at these unsupported islands. Okay, so these on the dozer looking at this. There's a couple of bits there that might need looking at. Those were expected. Again, that's on the dozer. Let's see how long that's. Again, I might just go and fudge those bits because they don't look too bad. Same with that bit, that'll be a bit of a fudge on that. Same with that, I would imagine. Same with those. And those. Yep, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and edit all these within here, fixing these all up, and then I'll do that off camera and then we can have a look at what happens after that. Okay, so there you go. What I've done there is I've gone through all these files and I've done each layer. I've just literally gone in, same as I was describing earlier, coloured in the pixels to join up all the parts. Now I know it's a little bit of a fudge, but it does minimise the amount of supports I need to use, especially when I've got tiny little islands which really are going to be difficult to add the supports in. So hopefully that will give you some idea of how I'll create this file. I'll then just click on save. It creates the file, does all the settings which are already preset that I've converted in from experience, like the exposure times, speeds of the lift and retract speed and light off. That's all set up, so just click on OK. Then I'm going to copy that onto a memory stick and then we'll transfer it over to the printer. Hopefully that's given you a really good idea of how I go about creating the print files. Obviously once the files come off the printer, I'll create a video to show you then how I can clean them all up and turn them into files that I'm actually into models I'm actually going to be able to use. So thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to be notified every time I make a new upload. Thanks for watching again. Bye.